Alright, let's kick this off properly. If you've ever spent money on a game and instantly felt that regret creeping in, yeah, we've all been there, but every once in a while, you play something so good, so polished, so addictive, that you actually sit back and think, yeah, this was worth every single dollar. No discounts, no waiting, no second thoughts. Just pure value. And today we're talking about those rare games, the ones that don't just meet expectations. They completely blow past them and make you feel like you got more than what you paid for. So in this video, I've put together 15 games that truly earn their price tag. These are the kind of experiences that stay with you long after the credits roll, whether it's because of the story, the gameplay, or just how insanely fun they are to play. Some of these you've probably already heard of, but trust me, there are a few here that might surprise you. And yeah, the further we go, the better it gets. Send me the first game name, and we'll start building this list properly. There's something about Red Dead Redemption 2 that just hits different the moment you step into its world. It's not just a game you play, it's a world you live in, where even the smallest details feel intentional, like the way your horse reacts to danger or how random strangers remember your actions hours later. What really makes it worth every dollar is how slow and immersive it is, and I know that might sound like a downside to some people, but once it clicks, you realize that pace is exactly what makes everything feel real. Riding through the wilderness with nothing but ambient sounds, getting into unpredictable encounters, or just sitting by a campfire listening to conversations, it pulls you in like no other game. And then there's Arthur Morgan, a character who starts off feeling like just another outlaw but slowly becomes one of the most human, emotional protagonists in gaming. By the time the story wraps up, it doesn't feel like you finished a game, it feels like you experienced a full journey. Even after hundreds of hours, there's still stuff to discover, which makes it one of those rare games where the price almost feels too low for what you get. Then you've got The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt. And honestly, this is one of those games where you install it thinking you'll just play for a few hours, and suddenly it's taken over your entire week. What makes it feel worth every dollar is how insanely rich everything is. Not just the main story, but even the side quests feel like full-on mini-stories with real choices and consequences. You're not just checking off objectives, you're making decisions that stick with you, sometimes in ways you don't even expect until much later. Playing as Geralt feels smooth and satisfying, especially once you start mixing sword combat with signs and potions, and there's this constant feeling that you're growing stronger in a world that's just as dangerous. And the world itself, it's massive, but it never feels empty. Every village, every forest, every random contract has something going on, something worth your time. Plus, when you add the expansions like Blood and Wine, it honestly feels like you got an entire extra game on top of an already huge experience. This is one of those rare games where even after finishing it, you still think about going back just to see what you missed or try a different path. And then there's Elden Ring. A game that doesn't just test your skills, it straight up challenges your patience, your curiosity, and honestly, your sanity at times. But that's exactly why it feels worth every dollar. The moment you step into the lands between, there's no hand-holding, no long tutorials dragging you around. You're just dropped into this massive, mysterious world and told, figure it out. And somehow, that freedom makes every discovery hit so much harder. You'll spend hours getting destroyed by a boss, questioning your life choices, and then suddenly, everything clicks and you take it down, and that feeling is unmatched. What really makes it special is how exploration actually matters. You're constantly finding hidden dungeons, insane weapons, or completely optional bosses that feel just as important as the main ones. And the world design is just on another level, with areas connecting in ways that make you stop and go, wait, how did I even get here? It's tough, yeah, but it never feels unfair once you understand it, and that balance is what keeps pulling you back in. By the time you're done, you don't just feel like you beat a game, you feel like you earned it. And trust me, we're only getting started, because the next ones take this to a whole different level. Then you've got God of War, 2018, and this is one of those games that completely redefines what a sequel can be. If you played the older games, you already know Kratos as this rage-filled god who just destroys everything in his path. But here, it's different. slower, more personal, and honestly way more emotional than you expect. What makes it worth every dollar is how perfectly it balances storytelling and gameplay. The relationship between Kratos and Atreus feels real, like you're watching it grow with every step of the journey, and it pulls you in without even trying too hard. And then there's the combat. That Leviathan axe just feels incredible to use. Every throw, every recall, every hit has weight to it, and once you start unlocking new abilities, fights become this smooth mix of strategy and pure power. The world design is also super tight, not fully open world, but interconnected in a way that always keeps you curious about what's around the corner. It's one of those games where you start playing for the action and end up staying for the story. And right when you think you've seen it all, it keeps surprising you in ways you didn't expect, which makes the whole experience feel even more worth it. And then there's The Last of Us Part 1, which is one of those games that just stays with you long after you put the controller down. On the surface, yeah, it's a post-apocalyptic survival game, but once you get into it, you realize it's really about people, relationships, and the kind of choices that don't have clear right or wrong answers. What makes it worth every dollar is how grounded and real everything feels. The combat isn't about being overpowered, it's tense, limited, and sometimes straight up uncomfortable, in a good way. Every bullet counts, every encounter feels risky, and that constant pressure keeps you fully locked in. But the real heart of the game is Joel and Ellie. Watching their relationship slowly build over time feels natural, not forced, and by the end, you're emotionally invested in a way most games just don't manage to do. The remake takes all of that and elevates it with better visuals, smoother gameplay, and more detail in every moment, making it feel even more immersive. It's not always an easy game to play emotionally, but that's exactly why it hits so hard and why it feels completely worth the price. And trust me, the next few games take things in a totally different direction, so don't go anywhere.
Up ahead. You hear that? Shh.
And then you have Baldur's Gate 3, and honestly, this game feels like it shouldn't even exist with how much content is packed into it. This isn't just a game you play, it's a full-on RPG sandbox where your choices actually matter in ways most games only pretend they do. What makes it worth every dollar is the freedom. You can approach situations however you want, talk your way out, fight your way through, or do something completely unexpected that the game somehow still accounts for. And the crazy part is, it reacts to you. Characters remember what you did, storylines change based on your decisions, and even small choices can lead to huge consequences later on. Combat is turn-based, but it never feels slow once you understand it. It's all about strategy, positioning, and using the environment, which makes every fight feel like a puzzle. But the real magic is in how alive the world feels. Your companions have depth, personality, and their own stories that unfold alongside yours, making the journey feel personal. You can easily lose hundreds of hours here and still feel like you've barely scratched the surface. And yeah, this is one of those games where you don't just finish it once. You finish it, then immediately start thinking about what you're going to do differently next time. And then there's Cyberpunk 2077, which honestly might be one of the biggest comeback stories in gaming. At launch, yeah, it had issues, and a lot of people wrote it off completely. But if you play it now, especially with all the updates and improvements, it feels like a totally different experience. What makes it worth every dollar today is how immersive Night City really is. This place isn't just big, it's alive, with neon lights, crowded streets, and that constant feeling that something is always happening around you. You're not just moving through a world, you're part of it. Combat feels flexible depending on how you want to play, whether you're going full stealth, hacking everything from the shadows, or just going loud with heavy weapons. And then there's the story, which is way more personal than you'd expect. V's journey, combined with characters like Johnny Silverhand, pulls you into something that feels emotional, chaotic, and sometimes even a bit dark in a way that sticks with you. The choices you make shape how things play out, and that gives the whole experience real weight. It's one of those games that proves a rough start doesn't define everything, because in its current state, it delivers way more than what most people expect. And yeah, it definitely earns its price now. And just wait, because the next few picks take things to a whole new level. And then you've got Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, and this one. This one doesn't just test you, it forces you to improve whether you like it or not. There's no over-leveling your way out, no easy builds to rely on. It's just you, your timing, and your ability to stay calm under pressure. What makes it worth every dollar is how tight and focused the combat is. Once it clicks, it becomes one of the most satisfying systems you'll ever play. Every clash of swords, every perfectly timed deflection, every last-second dodge feels insanely rewarding. At first, it can feel brutal, like the game is constantly punishing you, but the more you stick with it, the more you realize it's actually teaching you. Boss fights turn into these intense rhythm battles where you're reading patterns, reacting instantly, and slowly mastering the fight. And when you finally win, it's not luck, it's pure skill. The world itself is also beautiful in a quieter way, with this dark, atmospheric version of feudal Japan that feels both peaceful and dangerous at the same time. It's not as massive as some other games on this list, but everything it does is so polished and intentional that it never feels like anything is missing. This is one of those games where the challenge is the reward, and once you get into that mindset, it becomes almost impossible to put down. Then you've got Ghost of Tsushima, and this is one of those games that just feels like art the moment you start playing. From the very first ride across the fields, the wind guiding you instead of a map full of icons, it already feels different. What makes it worth every dollar is how it completely nails that samurai fantasy without ever feeling clunky or overcomplicated. The combat is smooth, fast, and super satisfying once you start switching stances depending on the enemy, and every duel feels intense in this clean, cinematic way. But honestly, what really stays with you is the atmosphere. The world is insanely beautiful. Like every sunrise, every storm, every golden field feels like it was made to be captured in a screenshot. And Jin's journey is more than just fighting invaders. It's about identity, honor, and what you're willing to sacrifice to protect your home, which adds real weight to everything you do. Even side activities like bamboo strikes or duels feel meaningful instead of just filler, because they keep you grounded in that samurai lifestyle. It's one of those games where you don't just play through the story, you actually feel like you're living it. And right about now, we're getting into the final stretch, where things only get better from here. And then there's Horizon Forbidden West, which honestly feels like stepping into a next-gen nature documentary mixed with a full-on action RPG. From the moment you load in, the world just looks unreal. Massive machines roaming through forests, deserts, and underwater ruins, all behaving like they actually belong there. What makes it worth every dollar is how much detail is packed into everything you do. Combat isn't just about shooting arrows, it's about studying machines, targeting weak points, and adapting your strategy depending on what you're fighting. And when it clicks, taking down these huge robotic creatures feels insanely satisfying. Aloy's journey also feels more personal here, as she's not just saving the world, she's constantly trying to understand it, and that mystery keeps pulling you forward. The exploration is a big upgrade too, with more vertical movement, underwater sections, and hidden areas that actually reward curiosity instead of just checking boxes. It's one of those games where you can easily get distracted just exploring, and somehow that never feels like wasted time. Visually, it's one of the best-looking games out there, but it's not just about graphics, it's how alive everything feels. And yeah, at this point in the list, you can probably already tell we're only hitting heavy hitters now. Then you've got Resident Evil 4 Remake, and this is a perfect example of how to remake a classic without ruining what made it special in the first place. From the moment it starts, it pulls you straight into that tense survival horror feeling, where you're constantly low on ammo, always thinking one step ahead, and never fully comfortable in any situation. What makes it worth every dollar is how perfectly balanced it feels. The combat is tight, every shot matters, and the knife parry system adds this extra layer of control that makes fights feel way more dynamic than the original. But even with all the action, it never loses that creepy atmosphere. Every village, Every hallway, every encounter with the villagers has this uneasy feeling like something could go wrong at any second, and Leon as a character just carries the whole experience with that mix of seriousness and dry humor, which actually helps break the tension at just the right moments. The pacing is also spot on, constantly switching between intense combat, exploration, and those quieter moments where you're just barely catching your breath. It's one of those rare remakes where you don't just think it's good for a remake, you think it's just a straight-up amazing game on its own. And yeah, we're getting really close to the end now, and the final picks are absolute legends. Then there's Alan Wake 2, and this game feels like stepping straight into a psychological nightmare that somehow looks like a movie the whole time. It's not your typical action horror experience. It's slower, more deliberate, and way more focused on atmosphere and storytelling than constant combat. What makes it worth every dollar is how bold it is with its presentation. The way it blends live-action style cutscenes with gameplay, the shifting perspectives between characters, and that constant feeling that reality is slightly breaking apart. It all pulls you in deeper than you expect. Playing as Alan trapped in the dark place feels genuinely unsettling, like the environment itself is trying to confuse you, while Saga's side of the story keeps things grounded but still full of mystery. And the way both stories connect is handled in a really clever way that slowly starts to click the more you progress. Combat isn't about action-heavy chaos, it's about tension, limited resources, and making every encounter feel meaningful. But honestly, the real strength here is the storytelling. It doesn't rush you, it builds mood, it builds tension, and then it hits you with moments that stick in your head long after you stop playing. This is one of those games where you don't just follow the story, you feel like you're trapped inside it. Then there's Control, and this is one of those games that just throws you into the weirdest situation possible and somehow makes it feel normal by the end. From the moment you step into the oldest house, nothing really behaves like a regular game world anymore. The building shifts, rooms change when you're not looking, and the entire place feels like it's alive in a really unsettling way. What makes it worth every dollar is how creative it is with its setting and powers. You start off feeling weak and confused, but slowly you're throwing objects across rooms with telekinesis, flying through combat, and completely turning fights into chaos in the best way possible. And that power fantasy builds up naturally, so it never feels like you're suddenly overpowered for no reason. The story is also full of mystery, with that strange mix of government secrecy, paranormal events, and questions that rarely get simple answers. It keeps you guessing the whole time, and even when things start making sense, there's always something else pulling you deeper. Combat is fast, explosive, and super satisfying once everything clicks, especially when the environment becomes part of the fight. It's one of those games that feels strange at first, but the more you play, the more you realize how unique it actually is. Then you've got Marvel's Spider-Man, and honestly, this is one of those games that just makes you smile the second you start swinging through the city. It doesn't waste time trying to convince you it's fun, it just is. The movement alone is worth every dollar, because swinging around New York feels so smooth, fast, and responsive that you'll often forget fast travel even exists. You'll just get distracted swinging from building to building, doing tricks in the air, and taking the long way just because it feels good. But beyond that, the combat is super fluid too, mixing web-based attacks, gadgets, and acrobatics in a way that makes every fight feel cinematic, but still under your control. And then there's Peter Parker himself, which is honestly one of the best versions of the character we've seen in games. He's not just Spider-Man, he's also dealing with real-life problems, and that balance actually makes the story hit harder than you expect. The pacing is clean, the missions never feel like filler, and even side content feels like it has purpose, instead of just being there to extend playtime. It's one of those games where you start off just messing around in the city, and suddenly you realize you're fully invested in the story, the characters, and the world itself. And at this point in the list, it's pretty clear we're talking about games that don't just entertain you, they completely pull you in.
Remember, he said not to kill him.
Good idea. In fact, we don't have to do this at all if you don't want to.
We definitely want to.
Then there's Grand Theft Auto V, and at this point, it's kind of crazy how this game still holds up after so many years. You don't just play GTA 5, you kind of drop into a whole ecosystem that keeps going whether you're paying attention or not. What makes it worth every dollar is the sheer amount of freedom it gives you. One minute you're doing story missions with Michael, Franklin, and Trevor, and the next you're completely off track, just messing around in Los Santos like the game is basically saying, go do whatever you want. And that's the magic of it. The world is still one of the most detailed open worlds ever made, packed with random events, hidden interactions, and that constant sense that something chaotic is always around the corner. The 3-character system also keeps things fresh, because switching between them changes the pace and energy of the gameplay in a way that never really gets old. And even after all these years, the story still hits with a mix of chaos, humor, and seriousness that only Rockstar really pulls off this well. Then you've got GTA Online, which basically turned the game into a living platform that just keeps evolving. It's one of those rare games where you buy it once, and somehow it still feels relevant years later. And yeah, at this point, we're in the final stretch, and the last game is the kind of classic that almost everyone has played at least once. And the last game is Minecraft, and honestly, there's a reason this game is still everywhere after all these years. It looks simple at first, just blocks, survival, and crafting, but the moment you start playing, you realize it's basically limitless. What makes it worth every dollar is how it completely adapts to the player, instead of forcing you into one way of playing. You can survive the night, build massive cities, explore deep caves, fight bosses, or just chill and create whatever you want without any real pressure. And that freedom is what keeps people coming back, even after hundreds or thousands of hours. Every world feels different, every seed gives you a new story, and even the smallest moments, like barely escaping a cave or finally finishing a build you spent days on, feel rewarding in a way most games can't match. It's also one of those rare games that connects people, whether you're playing solo or with friends, because there's always something to do together. And that's the thing, Minecraft isn't just a game you finish, it's a game that grows with you over time. And that's the list. These are the games that don't just entertain you for a night, they actually feel worth the money long after you've stopped playing. Some of them hit you with story, some with gameplay, and some just give you pure freedom, but all of them earn their place here. Now I'm curious, what game do you think absolutely deserves to be on this list that I didn't mention? Drop it in the comments, I'd love to see your picks. And if you enjoyed this video, stick around because there's plenty more gaming content coming your way.